And in September, Hawaii will be hosting the Digital Government Summit, where they're going to discuss AI's role in governing the islands.
Shut the
Okay.
fuck up.
Isn't that strange? Like all of this is happening in 2023. I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjakovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken. Hold on, I'm going to choke on my coffee.
Uh-oh.
Oh my God, Stephanie. You've seen like Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the last 2 days, there has just been this really weird migration of birds at my house. Like they're on my roof, like pecking at the metal. I look outside and they're all like 100 of them just like sitting on the railing of my backyard fence.
Oh, that's creepy.
It's totally creepy. And then yesterday I look out and they're all like on the round pen where for my horse, and they're all just like sitting there and just cawing. These I guess they're like some interesting Texas native bird. I don't know. They look like blackbirds, but with longer tails.
Are they big? Like big blackbirds?
Huge, but like they're like bigger than blue jays, but they're not, they're not like crow sized. But it's creepy because I've never seen this before. And then they were all just like descending. And I'm like, where the fuck are they coming from? But they all just like went along the railing and then just sat there on the railing. It was really fucking weird. And they're out there now.
That creeps me out. When like animals do weird things like that, I always think like, is there something is there gonna be an earthquake, a tsunami? Like,
yeah,
why are they acting that way?
yeah, it's really strange because like I've seen them randomly around before, but I have never seen them congregated on my property.
Oh my God, that's so creepy.
Yeah, it's totally tripping me out.
We have like vultures down here in Florida. I mean, I think they're vultures. The freaking things are like the size of chickens. I'm not even exaggerating. They're huge. And we see them every morning when I take my daughter to school. They hang out. We go like this back way and they hang out by the dumpsters by this like Chinese restaurant. And they're always out there at like whatever it is, like 6 a.m. And they're like the size of chickens. And I'm like, what the hell are they getting out of this dumpster? Because I've never seen birds that big, but they're really creepy. Like they look like they could definitely do some damage. So
yeah, I'm waiting for one of them to somehow get through the vent for my wood stove and like start coming in.
oh my God. Okay. So that actually happened to my mother-in-law.
What?
Yes. When I was visiting her in Illinois a few years ago, we heard this like noise, this like rattling noise, and we like couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And after searching like every area of her house, we found out the vent above the stove, it had like a screen, but you could hear something in there. And we were like, oh my gosh. And she's like, I wonder when the guy was on the roof if he didn't cover, because there's supposed to be like a little cover. And so we go to like open it and we were like terrified because we didn't know what it was. We're like, this could be a rat, like who knows? Yeah. And we see this little bird beak like come down, but it was like stuck, like it couldn't get out. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like we tried forever to try to figure out how to do this. And then finally we're like, we're just gonna have to like take this apart and just let it like fly into the house. And so we did, and it flew into the house and we like ushered it to the door and it got out and it lived. But it was like the craziest thing. I'm like, how random is that?
Yeah, and it's totally creepy. And I was sitting here like getting ready to do this podcast and I just hear like pecking on the roof. And so I get up and I go outside and there's like all these birds on the roof. And I feel like a crazy woman because I'm out there like, go away, go away.
Do you have like food out like for your animals?
No. I mean, and that other than like the horse and goat feed, which is over by the barn, which is they're not over there. They're at the house.
Oh my God. That's really strange.
Yeah, totally creepy.
Okay. Well, maybe
we're
talking about weird events happening actually. So have you heard about the Maui wildfires?
Yeah, how could I not? It's like everywhere.
Yeah. Wildfires. Interesting. Okay.
Like this is the wildfires.
Yeah. This is going to get weird. There's all kinds of things going around social media about these wildfires because it's not adding up. It's like the math isn't mathing, as they say. So they don't know still what exactly ignited the fires. They were doing a press conference, and they don't know like what initially started it. They're saying there was a hurricane, but the hurricane didn't make landfall, nor did it hit the Big Island first, which is just highly unusual that it would completely skip the Big Island and then go and hit Maui. The other thing that's unusual is it didn't flood the island, but it causes wildfires. Like, I live in Florida, we deal with hurricanes every single year, and wildfires is just, it's not a thing with hurricanes. You worry about flooding and you worry about wind. Like, those are the dangers. And then the other thing that is highly, suspect, in my opinion, is that the National Weather Service didn't give a warning for this hurricane. And with hurricanes, you get a lot of notice. You get days, sometimes even like a couple of weeks that there's a hurricane coming. We watch the news, the Weather Channel, for like a whole week as a hurricane's approaching Florida. So I don't know why they wouldn't have any warning from the National Weather Service in Maui. And if that's not all crazy enough, the other thing is the emergency alert didn't go off as these fires were blazing. Like, these people had no warning. And there are a bunch of people on social media complaining because they're like, we get these false alarms, from the emergency system that there's a tsunami or whatever. But then there's a real emergency where the whole island is on fire and people have nothing. Yeah. So, of course, the governor, who wasn't even on the island when the shit went down, blames climate change.
Of course.
And yeah, and he just happened to be off the island visiting family when this event happened. You know who did happen to be on the island, though?
Who?
A regional FEMA director. Isn't that a strange coincidence? And you want to know what else is interesting? In January of this year, Maui had the Smart City Conference where they said Maui would turn into a smart city. And essentially, the plan was to make the whole island dependent on electric, solar, and renewables. There's just one problem with that. The locals whose families have been there for generations refused to give up their land and sell their homes. And in September, Hawaii will be hosting the Digital Government Summit, where they're going to discuss AI's role in governing the islands.
Not the fuck up.
Isn't that strange? Like, all of this is happening in 2023. And like, stick with me for a minute, because like all of this will start to come together. These are just, it's like all these little puzzle pieces, and we're going to connect the dots. So we're just going to veer for a second and talk about the Weather Modification Act, which I think went into place in like 1976. And it includes activities like fog, cloud, and precipitation modification, hail and lightning suppression, and amelioration, I don't even know if I said that right, of severe storms and hurricanes. And the departments that are all a part of this include the Department of Defense, Department of Agriculture, Department of Interior, the EPA, and NASA. So we know the government can modify the weather, and they've been doing this since the 70s. And if you look now, what's going on, you have NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that appears to be involved in it as well. And if you go to their website and search weather modification programs, there are hundreds of projects listed that are taking place. And the thing that raised red flags for me was their budget request for 2023 was $6.8 billion. $6.8 billion in discretionary appropriations. And this is an increase of $1.4 billion from 2022. So the budget increase apparently allows NOAA to engage in a broader scope of decision makers from the federal to the local level and allow them to implement climate resiliency and adaptation measures. Like, start connecting the dots. Like, this, first of all, is very vague. and they're, making it all about climate change and $6 billion for weather modification. Like, that just seems extreme to me. And maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but it seems very strange. Now, there are like all of these images going around social media of what looks like a laser beam striking down, which I know sounds crazy. But Tara, do you remember a few months ago when there was that image of like those green lasers that were being spotted in Hawaii? And I
Yes.
mean, everyone, like the government, the news, everyone was talking about this. It wasn't a conspiracy. Like, this was there. And, people were thinking like it could be some type of Chinese weapon. And then the government was like, no, it's just satellites. Well, apparently, locals are saying that this laser beam came down and started the fire, because right after it hit is when the fire started. And like, again, it sounds like a sci-fi movie, but I want to play a clip from a whistleblower that recently came forward at the Disclosure Summit, which was the summit where they brought all these people together about like all the stuff that the government's hiding. And he was discussing this weapon that was being developed while he was under contract at the South Pole. So I'm going to go ahead and play the clip. He says that this weapon is called directed energy weapons.
And
And
this is the laser beam thing?
that's like what everyone's saying. And according to the whistleblower, like they already have them. This is a thing they already have. No one knows because it's like this secret government program at the South Pole. But people think maybe Hawaii was a target of this. So let me play it.
What are you blowing the whistle on? That there are technologies at the South Pole Station that people can't even consider that exist on this planet. Like what? Directed energy weapon systems is something that people need to get in their vocabulary fast. The ice cube neutrino detector is not simply a passive listening device as presented for the science that they're claiming it to do. It also has the capacity to transmit. What are you blowing the whistle?
So, okay. So what he's saying is at the South Pole, he basically was in charge of making sure everything was like safe. Like there were no fires, everything was working properly. So he had access to everything. And he found, out what they were doing. And they have like a cover for it where it's like, oh, we're just using these things to like listen in, to like eavesdrop, basically. But he's saying, no, it can transmit energy. It can be used as a directed energy weapon. And I've heard, other people throughout the government that think that China is developing or has already developed these weapons at all. So who knows? But I just think it's weird that, there were green lasers last year in Hawaii. Then multiple people, I mean, this wasn't just one photo. There were multiple people that spotted a photo of this laser right before the fire started. And they don't know how the fire originated. They still haven't publicly said it. So it's like, all right, let's say that is the case. What would be the motive? Well, the coveted land that the government, the elite, and basically every major developer has been trying to get for decades is not for sale. It's like the locals that have been holding on to it for generations and don't want to give it up. And I'm going to play another clip from a local who actually deals with this type of thing and just get his perspective on it.
In the industry of people losing their homes due to fire, flood, moisture, emergency services. But I need you guys to hear me out. You don't see what's going on. I feel something is bigger. I've been on Maui the last 9 years, and I know the geographical location and how everything works. There was no fucking way that a hurricane missed Big Island, went to Maui, and didn't flood them, didn't give them, crazy, other things, but it caused fires. It caused fires in not only on Maui, but it caused fires in the most precious parts of real estate in Maui. Lahaina Front Street is worth billions. The Hawaiians that have been holding out and the Kanaka have been holding out for years, not wanting to sell their property in Lahaina due to these big multi-million-dollar companies. It is not a coincidence. I don't believe how in the most precious parts of Maui, Kula, Lahaina, and Kihei, that the locals that are standing strong and do not want to give up Oprah Winfrey's fucking view up in Kula that the Hawaiians are holding out on, that the fire was going to, the Hawaiians and the Kanaka that was holding right there on Front Street.
So what's interesting with all of this is in this rich area that he's talking about, the homes of people like Oprah and Jeff Bezos were untouched. In fact, when you look at the footage that's all over the place, I mean, these locals are posting everything. There are trees and homes that are completely untouched, but right next to them will be a home that looked like it was nuked. I mean, it's done. It's like demolished. There's nothing left. It makes no sense. And remember the governor of Hawaii, who just happened to be off the island the time of this? Well, just 1 month ago, he signed an executive order saying that the land can be taken away from the people if they need to rezone due to an emergency.
How convenient.
Yeah, is that not freaking crazy? So in January of this year, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands proposed a $75 million housing project on 51 acres in Lahaina. This was the area that was destroyed. And I would also like to add that this fits perfectly with the whole narrative from the World Economic Forum's plan for 15-minute cities, because it's wiping clear all this land that they've been trying to get for decades. And now they could put up these 15-minute cities. Now, another TikToker who is a local said that much of the land in Maui is considered historical. And so it's never been allowed to be bought and demolished and rebuilt. It's protected because it's a historical site. But now he said those historic buildings have burnt to the ground. So now, just like what the governor put through in this executive order, they can be rezoned and won't be considered historical anymore. So now they can build on it. And this man also said that there were 3 separate fires on the island, and each fire damaged the historic zoned areas. Crazy?
Yeah. Okay, like a year ago, I maybe I would have said this is just like major conspiracy theory vibes, but obviously I no longer believe that. And I truly think that all the puzzle pieces you just connected are totally true. And on top of that, like this fire is being declared the deadliest wildfire in the United States in over a century. Not only have people lost their homes and over 2,200 buildings have been destroyed with an estimated $6 billion worth of damage. But as of Sunday, August 13th, 93 people have lost their lives. And according to an article in the Associated Press, authorities are saying that like efforts to locate and identify the dead is still only in the beginning stages. So we can expect that there are going to be more deaths. The police chief of Maui, John Pelletier, he said that crews with cadaver dogs have only covered 3% of the 5 square miles of search area. And what's even more disturbing, he said that identifying the dead is extremely challenging because when they pick up the charred remains of the dead, they just fall apart. Like this fire has burned like metal to the ground. And like, how sad is that? And as you mentioned earlier, the governor saying this is related to climate change. Well, look what happened with the wildfires in Europe. And remember all that weird shit with the wildfire in Canada and the strange hotspots and weird zones there. And, you know, so of course you've got scientists claiming that climate change is causing all of these weather events. And then this fire is also being blamed not just on the hurricane, but on winds and in combination with a low pressure system to the west near Japan and dry vegetation. But again, there's still no actual, what do you call it? We still don't know exactly what started the fire, right? But it's like you said earlier, who knows what's being done with the Weather Modification Act and how weather's being manipulated and blamed on climate change? Because how fucking perfect is that to be able to manipulate the weather and scare everybody into believing, oh my God, it's climate change?
Yeah, I've looked it up before, and these programs are active in Florida as well. Like, it's on the internet. Anyone can go and see. It's not a conspiracy. They put it right out there. And not only that, but like I said, they're getting $6 billion in funding. But what you said about the fire being so hot that it melted metal, it's like it reminds me of 9/11.
Right.
Like, it's not supposed to melt steel. Like, this isn't normal. And like I said, the photos, it looked like what you would see after a nuke. Like, it was not like anything I've ever seen before. And my God, these poor people, they had no warning. There were people literally jumping into the ocean because there was nowhere to go. There were 911 calls of people being trapped. They say there's thousands missing.
Yeah.
So, it's terrible. And all these people, like, everyone is highly suspicious of this that's posting on social media. They're like, this is not adding up. And they want some answers. And I don't know that they're going to get them, especially with this governor that seems to be doing some shady shit. So it's like definitely something odd going on here.
Yeah. There's too many variables that you can connect to make this just an accidental fire.
Right. Yeah. So this is, it's really concerning. And if it can happen there, I mean, couldn't they do it anywhere?
Yeah.
Like, look at East Palestine, that whole area can be considered a hazard and people can lose their homes. Like, the EPA is allowed to do that if it's a hazardous area. And so it's really, really concerning. And I just feel so bad for these people. And I hope that they can find all of these, thousands of people that are missing. And I can't even imagine. So that's what's going on in Maui, Tara.
Yeah.
Pretty depressing, but
usually is.
that's right. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you back here on Weird Wednesday, right? Wednesday?
Yes. So yeah, Wednesdays.
Yeah. Don't know what day of the week it is, but we'll be back here. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.